Alien ships sold for nothing. It was considered useless, until a human changed its fate forever. Everywhere he looked, alien ships of all sizes were parked in neat rows. Some were sleek and shiny, glowing with energy, while others were huge cargo vessels that hummed like giant insects. Traders shouted prices, aliens bargained loudly, and everywhere Ethan looked, he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He was a human, a small presence in a galaxy full of older, bigger species. But humans had a gift. They saw potential in things others ignored. He passed many ships, stopping only for a quick glance at their designs. Most of them were impressive, but also expensive. Ethan's savings were small, earned from years of salvaging and repairing old machines on distant colonies. He knew he could not afford the best ships, but he had learned to trust his instincts. That's when he saw the drift shell. It was not shiny, not impressive, and it definitely looked old. Its hull was scratched, dented, and covered in layers of alien paint. Panels hung loosely and wires peeked from broken compartments. The ship looked like it had been abandoned for decades. Alien traders laughed nearby. "You really want that?" one of them said. "It is worthless, nothing but junk." Ethan smiled quietly. He did not answer. He walked closer, feeling the vibration of the engines even though they were weak. Something about the drift shell called to him. He ran his hand along the metal, noticing the unusual shape of the hull. It was not like other ships. It had curves and lines that suggested a hidden design. It was strange, almost alive. The aliens had never finished it, or maybe they had tried and failed. But Ethan had a gut feeling. This ship was not broken. It was misunderstood. He studied the cockpit, which was narrow but strangely shaped. The controls looked complicated, with buttons, levers, and panels that no alien would bother to touch for long. But Ethan could see patterns. He had worked with broken systems before, and he had learned to think differently. He could imagine how the ship would move, how it could respond if someone knew its secrets. Other humans might have ignored it, thinking it was too old or too damaged, but Ethan felt a spark of excitement. This was more than a ship. It was a challenge. The aliens noticed his interest and shook their heads. "Why waste your money?" one said in a harsh voice. "It cannot fly properly. It is dangerous. Buy something real or leave." Ethan shook his head and stepped back. He took out a small device and scanned the ship. The readings were messy, unstable, and confusing. Engines showed weak output, power circuits were irregular, and sensors barely worked. No human could fly this ship and survive a long journey. At least that was what most aliens would think. But Ethan did not see weakness. He saw potential. He looked around to make sure no one was watching too closely. With a deep breath, he approached the trader again. "I'll take it," he said calmly. The alien trader laughed. "Take it? You mean take nothing? Fine, nothing it is. 5 credits and it is yours." Ethan handed over the small pile of credits he had saved. It was everything he owned. The trader smirked, expecting him to regret it immediately, but Ethan only smiled. He knew this was the right choice. He watched as the drift shell was detached from its stand and slowly moved toward the exit. Alien workers shook their heads, muttering about humans who did not know the value of money or time. Ethan climbed into the cockpit for the first time. The smell of old metal and stale air filled his nose. He touched the controls, feeling the strange arrangement of buttons and levers. Everything was cold and stiff but alive. He could feel the energy running through the circuits, the potential waiting to be awakened. He studied the ship carefully. Panels were loose, but they were not broken beyond repair. Wiring had been done in strange patterns, but he could trace it with his eyes. The engine cores were small, not powerful, but they had adaptability. Ethan knew that with careful work he could make the ship respond. It would not be easy. He would have to spend days, maybe weeks, fixing circuits, cleaning panels, and understanding the alien systems. Other humans might have given up, but Ethan had patience. Humans thrived on challenges. He left the trade station and moved the ship to a quiet repair dock on the edge of the city. The dock was old, mostly abandoned, but it had enough equipment for his needs. Ethan climbed down from the cockpit and walked around the hull, checking every panel, every seam, every wire. He noticed small details that others had missed. A pattern in the engine vents, an unusual alignment of sensors, tiny symbols etched into the hull. They did not mean much to alien traders, but Ethan knew that humans often saw connections where others saw chaos. He felt excitement growing inside him. That night, Ethan worked by dim lights. He opened panels, tightened bolts, cleaned sensors, and rewired some circuits. He could feel the ship responding to his touch. Slowly, the drift shell seemed less dead, more alive. It was as if it understood that someone finally cared. The ship's weak hum grew stronger, a rhythm that matched Ethan's heartbeat. He paused and listened, amazed. It was not magic, it was engineering, but it felt like life. His neighbor, Lisa Brown, an alien mechanic, stopped by the dock. She looked at the drift shell with disbelief. "You are working on that thing? Everyone says it is useless," she said. Ethan shrugged. "It is not useless. It is different. I think it just needs someone who understands it." Lisa shook her head. "Aliens would never finish it. They gave up long ago." Ethan smiled. "Maybe humans are better at finishing things aliens abandon." Lisa did not answer, but she watched as Ethan carefully adjusted a small panel. The lights on the dashboard flickered and the ship responded to his touch. Days passed, and Ethan worked tirelessly. He ate little, slept little, and spent all his energy understanding the drift shell. He discovered systems that seemed random but were actually adaptive. The ship could adjust to changes, but only if a pilot understood its patterns. Alien species had avoided such ships because they could not bond with them. Humans, however, thrived on learning, adapting, and improvising. Ethan was beginning to see why this ship had been misunderstood. One evening, the city lights reflected off the hull of the drift shell. Ethan stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. The ship looked small, almost fragile, but he felt its hidden strength. He could feel the potential energy flowing through its circuits, waiting to be awakened. Other aliens might laugh, but Ethan knew that soon the drift shell would fly again. Not just fly, but excel in ways no one had imagined. He felt a mixture of fear and excitement. If he succeeded, he would change everything he knew about human skill and alien engineering. Ethan stood on the dock and placed his hand on the hull. He whispered softly, "I will make you fly." The ship seemed to hum in reply. It was quiet now, almost still, but Ethan could feel a rhythm beneath the surface. The drift shell had chosen him, or maybe he had chosen it. Either way, they were together now. And in that moment, Ethan Cole understood that the galaxy would never see the drift shell the same way again. It was no longer a useless ship. It was a human challenge, and humans never backed down from challenges. As the night grew darker, Ethan continued his work. Wires were stripped and reconnected, panels were aligned, and engines were carefully tested. The smell of oil and metal filled the air. It was exhausting, but Ethan did not stop. Humans had patience. Humans had curiosity. Humans had a way of seeing what others could not. The drift shell was alive now, in a way only humans could awaken. It waited silently, and Ethan knew that soon, very soon, it would show the galaxy what humans could do. And so the first part of Ethan's journey ended not with excitement, not with a launch into the stars, but with understanding. He had claimed what others had discarded, he had seen what others had ignored, and he had begun the work that would change everything. The galaxy laughed at the drift shell, called it useless, ignored it, but Ethan did not. Humans did not fear what others abandoned. Humans made it their own. And Ethan Cole, a simple human salvage worker, had just begun to rewrite the story of the drift shell. Ethan Cole worked on the drift shell every day. The ship was no longer just a pile of metal to him. It felt alive in a quiet, strange way. Every panel, every wire, every engine part seemed to respond when he touched it. He had spent hours cleaning, tightening, and adjusting, but now he started to understand the deeper systems. They were not broken, they were unfinished. Alien builders had abandoned them because they required constant attention and subtle adjustments. Ethan smiled. Humans were good at that. Humans could work with chaos. He ran his hands along the control panels, noticing small differences in the layout. The buttons and levers were confusing to alien eyes, but for Ethan they were almost like a puzzle. He pushed a lever, and a weak hum ran through the ship. He adjusted a panel, and the sensors flickered to life. The drift shell responded slowly, like it was waking from a long sleep. Ethan's heart beat faster. He realized that this was not just a ship, it was adaptive. It could learn, but only if someone interacted with it carefully. His neighbor Lisa Brown came by again, watching from a distance. "You are wasting your time," she said quietly. "It might respond a little, but it will never be a real ship." Ethan shook his head, keeping his eyes on the dashboard. "You do not understand," he said. "It is not broken. It is waiting for someone who can work with it." Lisa frowned. She did not understand humans the way Ethan did. Humans were patient, curious, and fearless. They looked at machines not as tools but as partners. Slowly, she started to see what Ethan meant. Small lights on the drift shell began to blink and glow, moving in a pattern she had never seen before. The ship was alive. Ethan spent hours learning the ship's quirks. The engines were weak, but they had flexibility. The sensors were inaccurate, but they adapted to new information quickly. The hull could bend slightly under stress, absorbing impacts instead of resisting them. Ethan experimented carefully, testing limits and observing reactions. The drift shell responded to every adjustment, and he began to predict its behavior. He realized that the ship's design was meant for someone quick, adaptive, and willing to trust instinct, that someone was human. One afternoon, Ethan decided to test a small engine sequence. He connected power to the main thrusters and carefully adjusted the auxiliary systems. The engines sputtered, then roared to life with a strange harmony. The sound was not smooth like other alien ships. It was irregular, almost alive. The drift shell trembled, and Ethan held tightly to the controls. Then, without warning, a panel in the hull shifted slightly, redirecting energy to the thrusters. Ethan stumbled back but regained his balance. The ship had reacted on its own. It was learning. Lisa gasped. She had never seen anything like it. It moved by itself?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "It listens, it adapts, it is alive in a way aliens never could understand." She watched as lights ran across the hull, sensors adjusted, and small vents opened to release heat. The drift shell was not just a machine, it was a partner, waiting for someone who could understand its language. Ethan felt proud. He was giving the ship a chance, and it was responding. Over the next few days, Ethan pushed the drift shell further. He created complex sequences of controls, testing how the ship would react to stress. He threw it off balance, turned systems on and off, and watched carefully. Each time, the ship adapted. Small parts moved on their own, power redirected, and sensors adjusted without his direct input. It was as if the drift shell was learning from him. Ethan realized that the ship could survive situations no alien pilot could manage. Humans were fast thinkers, able to make quick decisions. The drift shell thrived in that environment. One evening, Ethan stayed at the dock long after the sun had set. The city lights reflected off the hull, making the ship glow faintly. He climbed into the cockpit and ran sequences of adjustments, feeling the ship respond beneath his hands. The engines hummed, the sensors blinked, and he realized the drift shell was becoming something more than anyone had imagined. It was powerful, adaptive, and ready to respond to danger. All it needed was a pilot who could think and react fast. Lisa came closer, her curiosity growing. She watched Ethan manipulate panels and levers, seeing the ship adapt to every small adjustment. "It is amazing," she whispered. "I have never seen a ship like this." Ethan smiled. "It is not amazing yet. It is only beginning. The galaxy calls it useless, but humans see what aliens cannot. We can finish what they abandoned." Lisa nodded slowly. She began to understand that humans had a special talent for machines. They did not just follow instructions. They improvised, adapted, and partnered with technology. Ethan decided to test a navigation system that had been ignored for decades. The drift shell had a series of directional sensors and small engines meant for precise maneuvering, but aliens had found it too complicated. Ethan worked for hours, connecting circuits and adjusting controls. Slowly, the ship began to respond. Small thrusters fired, and the ship turned with incredible precision. Ethan laughed quietly. He could see the future. The drift shell would not only fly, it would excel. He started to explore other systems as well. Weapons were inactive, but the ship had power nodes that could channel energy in unusual ways. Defensive shields were weak, but adaptive. Ethan realized that the ship could survive attacks by changing shape and redirecting energy. He sketched diagrams, noting how human reflexes could control systems too complex for alien pilots. The drift shell was designed for instinct, not routine. Ethan understood instinct better than anyone. Days turned into weeks. Ethan slept little, ate quickly, and worked constantly. The drift shell was alive now, in a way no one had seen before. Lights ran across panels, engines adjusted automatically, and vents moved as if breathing. Ethan felt a deep bond forming. The ship trusted him just as he trusted it. Together, they were becoming more than a human and a ship. They were a single unit. One morning, Ethan took a risk. He activated all the engines at once, carefully adjusting energy flow to prevent overload. The drift shell trembled and vibrated, then stabilized. Sensors lit up and the hull adjusted to stress. Ethan grinned. He had done it. The ship had responded to full power without braking. Lisa watched in awe. "You are incredible," she said. "And so is the ship." Ethan nodded. "We are incredible together. Humans can see potential where aliens see junk." He knew the next step was flight. The dock was too small for full takeoff, but he could test movement in low atmosphere. Ethan carefully started engines, the drift shell vibrating beneath him. Small thrusters fired, sensors adjusted automatically, and the ship lifted slightly. Ethan laughed with joy. For weeks, he had worked with the drift shell, and now it was alive, moving, reacting. The galaxy had called it useless, but he knew better. It was only beginning to show its true potential. Ethan spent hours guiding the ship around the dock, adjusting power and controls. Every movement was precise, every reaction adaptive. The drift shell responded as if it understood him, shifting panels, redirecting energy, and stabilizing itself. Lisa could not believe her eyes. Humans had awakened something the galaxy had abandoned. They had taken a useless ship and turned it into something alive. As night fell, Ethan climbed out of the cockpit and placed his hand on the hull. The drift shell hummed gently, almost like a purr. Ethan whispered softly, "We are ready. Soon we will fly." He knew the galaxy would never believe what was possible until it saw it. But he did not care. Humans did not wait for permission or recognition. They acted, they created, and they finished what others left behind. The drift shell had been sold for nothing, laughed at by the galaxy, ignored by aliens, and abandoned by its builders. But Ethan Cole, a simple human, had seen its potential. He had worked with it, understood it, and awakened its hidden systems. The ship was no longer useless. It was alive, adaptive, and ready for the next challenge. And Ethan knew that the next challenge would change everything. The night was quiet and the city slept, but the drift shell hummed with energy. Lights flickered across its panels, engines whispered promises, and systems adjusted automatically. Ethan sat beside it, tired but happy. Humans had patience, humans had instinct, and humans had curiosity. Together with the drift shell, Ethan felt unstoppable. The galaxy might laugh today, but tomorrow it would see the truth. The drift shell was no longer just a ship. It was a living symbol of human skill, and Ethan Cole was only beginning to discover what it could become. Ethan Cole had spent weeks working with the drift shell. Every panel, engine, and sensor had been adjusted, repaired, or modified. The ship no longer felt dead. It responded to him almost as if it could think. He had tested it on the dock, lifting slightly into the air, but now it was time for the first real flight. Ethan felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The drift shell had hidden systems that no one had ever seen. He did not know exactly what it would do, but he trusted it, and it trusted him. He prepared the ship carefully. Engines were aligned, power distributed evenly, and controls tested repeatedly. Lisa Brown, the alien mechanic, watched from the dock. "Are you sure it is ready?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "I have worked with it for weeks. It is alive now. It will respond. Just watch." Lisa did not fully understand, but she had seen the drift shell react like no other ship ever had. It was different. Strange, adaptive, and almost alive. Ethan climbed into the cockpit and started the engines. The drift shell hummed, and small lights ran along the panels. He carefully increased power, and the ship lifted off the dock smoothly. It hovered in the air, engines adjusting automatically, sensors blinking. Ethan smiled. It was flying, really flying for the first time in decades. He tested turns, gentle maneuvers, and the drift shell responded perfectly, moving in ways that no alien pilot could control. Lisa watched in amazement. She had never seen a ship respond so quickly and intelligently. He guided the drift shell out of the dock and into the sky. The city below looked small, and the wind rushed past the hull. Ethan's hands moved over the controls, making small adjustments. The ship responded instantly, stabilizing itself, redirecting power where it was needed. It was like flying a living creature. Ethan realized that humans were the perfect pilots for this design. Aliens had avoided such ships because they could not bond with them. Humans could think quickly, react fast, and improvise. The drift shell thrived in that environment. As Ethan tested higher speeds, something unexpected happened. Small vents along the hull opened, engines adjusted, and the ship changed its shape slightly. It became sleeker, more streamlined, almost organic. Ethan grinned. The drift shell was not just adaptive, it could transform. It had been designed to bond with a pilot and respond to instinct. Now it was showing him its full potential. Lisa gasped. "I have never seen anything like this," she said. Ethan laughed. "Neither have I, but it trusts me and I trust it. That is why it works." He decided to push further. He guided the drift shell toward the edge of the city, where the sky was open and empty. He increased speed, feeling the engines roar beneath him. The ship adjusted automatically, lifting energy from hidden nodes and redirecting power to thrusters. It moved faster than any alien pilot expected. Ethan's heart pounded, but he was calm. He had trained with it for weeks, and he knew how to guide it without forcing it. The drift shell was alive, and they were working together. Then the unexpected happened. A small alien patrol ship appeared, approaching quickly. It was sleek, armed, and confident. The alien pilot must have seen the drift shell and assumed it was worthless. Ethan's eyes narrowed. He had never faced combat in the drift shell, but he knew one thing: the ship could adapt. He tilted the controls slightly, and the drift shell reacted immediately. Engines shifted, thrusters fired in unusual directions, and the hull twisted subtly. The alien ship tried to match its speed, but the drift shell was already ahead. It was moving in ways that defied conventional flight patterns. The alien pilot fired weapons, but the drift shell adjusted automatically. Energy was redirected, shields strengthened at points of impact, and engines shifted again. Ethan's instincts guided the controls, but the ship seemed to anticipate his thoughts. He laughed in amazement. The drift shell was alive, adaptive, and capable of things no alien engineer had imagined. The patrol ship faltered, unable to predict the movements. Finally, the alien pilot disengaged and fled. Ethan floated in the sky, heart racing, amazed at what had just happened. He realized that the drift shell was not just a ship, it was a partner. It responded to instinct, learned quickly, and adapted in ways no alien could. Humans were the perfect match. Alien engineers had abandoned this design because they feared losing control. They could not bond with a living ship. Humans, however, thrived on unpredictability. Ethan felt pride and excitement. The galaxy had laughed at the drift shell, called it useless, and ignored it. Now it was alive and unstoppable. News of the flight spread quickly. Alien researchers arrived at the dock, observing from a distance. They studied the drift shell, trying to understand its systems. Ethan ignored them. He was not working for recognition or approval. He was working because he believed in the ship. Slowly, some aliens began to whisper. Maybe humans had something special. Maybe humans could do what aliens could not. Ethan smiled quietly. The drift shell had chosen him, and in doing so, it had shown the galaxy that humans were unique. Over the next few days, Ethan tested new maneuvers. He pushed the drift shell to higher altitudes, faster speeds, and sharper turns. The ship adjusted automatically, sensors glowing, engines roaring, and panels moving subtly. It learned from him, reacted to instinct, and thrived on challenge. Ethan realized that humans could unlock technology the galaxy had given up on. The drift shell was only the beginning. Lisa stayed close, watching in awe. "It is incredible," she said. "You and the ship, you are connected." Ethan nodded. Humans can see what others miss. We can finish what aliens abandon. The drift shell proves that." She shook her head slowly. "I never imagined a human could do this." Ethan smiled. Neither did the galaxy. Then came a moment that would change everything. A fleet of alien ships arrived, not patrols, but warships. They had heard about the drift shell and wanted to take it by force. Ethan's heart raced. He knew the drift shell could respond, but this was a real test. He gripped the controls, trusting the ship completely. The engines hummed, sensors blinked, and the hull shifted. The drift shell moved faster than the warships could track. It twisted, adapted, and dodged attacks with ease. Energy was redirected to shields, and vents adjusted automatically. Ethan realized something amazing. The drift shell could survive a fleet. The alien leaders watched in disbelief. Their most advanced ships could not match a single useless vessel. It moved unpredictably, adapted instantly, and reacted in ways no engineer had planned. The drift shell was alive, and it had chosen a human pilot. Ethan guided it skillfully, trusting instinct and allowing the ship to respond on its own. The warships tried to corner it, but the drift shell anticipated every move. Alien commanders were forced to retreat. They could not explain it, and they could not stop it. Ethan landed the drift shell back at the dock, exhausted but exhilarated. Lisa ran forward. "That was incredible," she exclaimed. "You survived the fleet." Ethan smiled, patting the hull. We survived together, the ship is alive, it adapts. Humans can work with it in ways aliens cannot. The galaxy will see that soon. He knew she was right. The drift shell was no longer useless. It had proven its value, and it had proven the unique power of humans. Aliens began to study the ship more closely. They scanned it, recorded data, and tried to understand its systems. Ethan did not stop them, but he knew something important. Humans had unlocked potential that aliens could not. The drift shell was a living, adaptive ship that responded to instinct, and Ethan Cole had been the key. He realized that humans could take abandoned technology, misunderstood machines, and useless designs, and make them extraordinary. As night fell, Ethan climbed out of the cockpit and stood beside the drift shell. Lights ran across the hull, engines hummed softly, and the sensors glowed. He placed his hand on the ship and whispered, "We are only beginning. The galaxy has not seen anything yet." Lisa watched quietly, understanding at last. Humans had something special. They could see potential where others saw failure. They could finish what aliens abandoned. And together with the drift shell, Ethan Cole had just begun to show the galaxy what humans were capable of. The first true flight of the drift shell had proven one thing: what humans touched did not stay broken. It adapted, it survived, and it thrived. The galaxy had judged the ship useless, but that judgment was wrong. Ethan had changed its fate forever. The drift shell would no longer be laughed at. It would be a symbol of human ingenuity, courage, and instinct. And Ethan Cole, a simple human pilot, had become its partner, unlocking secrets that the galaxy never thought possible. News of the drift shell spread quickly across the galaxy. Aliens who had once laughed at the useless ship now watched with fear and curiosity. Reports described a human pilot guiding a vessel that could move faster, adapt instantly, and survive attacks from advanced fleets. Councils of alien leaders gathered to discuss the threat. Some wanted to seize the ship, claiming it was dangerous. Others argued that it could be studied, weaponized, or destroyed. Ethan Cole, however, had no intention of giving it up. The drift shell was alive, and he trusted it completely. He prepared the ship at the dock, checking engines, sensors, and adaptive systems. Every adjustment he had made over weeks now worked perfectly. The hull had healed from small damages, panels aligned correctly, and power flowed smoothly to every subsystem. Ethan climbed into the cockpit, running his hands over the controls. The drift shell responded immediately, humming with energy, lights blinking along the panels. Lisa Brown watched him, a mixture of awe and worry in her eyes. "They will come for it," she said quietly. Ethan nodded. "Let them try, the ship is ready." The first attack came in the middle of the day. A squadron of alien ships appeared on the horizon, sleek and armed with powerful weapons. Their pilots had been briefed on the drift shell, expecting a simple human to be outmatched. Ethan took a deep breath and started the engines. The drift shell lifted, responding instantly to his commands. The small ship moved faster than any alien pilot anticipated, twisting, dodging, and adjusting to energy blasts automatically. It was not just speed, it was instinct and adaptation working together. The alien ships fired, but the drift shell shifted energy to shields and redirected blasts automatically. Vents along the hull opened to release heat, engines shifted to avoid damage, and panels adjusted to deflect attacks. Ethan guided the ship with precise movements, but he could feel the drift shell thinking with him, reacting faster than he ever could alone. The alien pilots faltered, unable to predict the unpredictable movements of a living ship guided by a human mind. One by one, they withdrew, surprised and humiliated. Ethan hovered in the sky, heart racing but calm. He and the drift shell had won the first test. Word spread fast. Alien fleets from other systems began to converge on Ethan's location. They wanted the drift shell, but they also wanted to study it. Ethan knew he could not fight endless fleets alone. He trusted the drift shell to protect him. As more ships arrived, he tested its limits. The hull twisted and flexed, absorbing minor collisions. Engines redistributed power to evade fire. Energy was redirected to shields where needed. The drift shell was alive, adaptive, and growing stronger with each encounter. Ethan realized something important. The galaxy had never faced a human-piloted ship like this. He began to move strategically. Instead of attacking, he focused on defense and evasion. The drift shell responded instantly, finding paths through asteroid fields, narrow canyons, and debris fields where larger ships could not follow. Alien commanders were frustrated. Their technology was superior in raw power, but it could not predict the unpredictable movements of the drift shell. Ethan realized that the humans' greatest strength was instinct. They could act without complete information, and the drift shell could trust that instinct. Together, they were unstoppable. The alien leaders decided to escalate. A massive fleet arrived, larger than anything Ethan had imagined. Hundreds of ships surrounded the city from orbit, firing warning shots. They demanded that Ethan surrender the drift shell immediately. Ethan took a deep breath and whispered to the ship, "They want us. Let's show them what we can do." The drift shell hummed, lights blinking, engines adjusting. Ethan guided it toward the fleet. Instead of attacking directly, he used the ship's agility to weave between attacks, slipping past defenses and forcing alien ships to change formation constantly. It was a dance of speed, adaptation, and instinct. The aliens tried to fire in unison, but the drift shell anticipated their patterns. Shields strengthened where needed, energy flowed to engines for rapid evasions, and the hull shifted subtly to absorb impacts. Ethan guided the ship carefully, but the drift shell also acted on its own, moving faster than he could think at times. Alien fleets were thrown into chaos. Commanders shouted orders, but the drift shell's unpredictability made coordination impossible. One by one, ships retreated, unable to control a single human-piloted vessel. After hours of maneuvering, the drift shell returned to the dock. Ethan climbed out, exhausted but exhilarated. The city below had watched in awe. Humans, aliens, and even independent traders recognized that a single ship, guided by a human, had survived attacks that fleets could not overcome. Lisa ran forward. "I have never seen anything like this," she said. Ethan smiled. "The galaxy called it useless. But humans can see potential where others do not. We finished what aliens abandoned." She nodded slowly, understanding the truth for the first time. The alien leaders were furious. They sent envoys to negotiate, trying to convince Ethan to hand over the ship. They offered wealth, power, and protection, but Ethan refused. "This ship is alive," he said firmly. "I will not give it to anyone. It trusts me. I trust it. It belongs with humans." The envoys were shocked. No alien had ever refused such offers before. Ethan's resolve sent a message across the galaxy. Humans were not like other species. They could protect and unlock the potential of things others ignored. Over the next days, Ethan continued testing the drift shell. He pushed it to higher speeds, sharper maneuvers, and new environments. The ship responded perfectly, learning and adapting with each trial. Energy nodes, shields, and engines worked together seamlessly. The drift shell's hull shifted to avoid collisions. Sensors adjusted to detect threats instantly, and panels moved to optimize energy flow. Every test confirmed that humans could do what aliens could not. The drift shell was alive, and Ethan had become its perfect partner. News of these flights spread even further. Alien traders, independent pilots, and researchers came to see the drift shell. Some were curious, some feared it, and some began to admire human skill. Ethan welcomed those who watched but refused to sell, share, or hand over control. He knew that humans had a gift. They could unlock the hidden potential of abandoned technology. The drift shell was proof. The galaxy had once called it useless, but now it was alive, thriving, and unstoppable. Then came a new challenge. A coalition of alien species sent a fleet to blockade the city, intending to force Ethan to surrender the drift shell. Hundreds of ships surrounded the area, armed with powerful weapons and advanced targeting systems. Ethan climbed into the cockpit, feeling the weight of the moment. He ran his hands over the controls. The drift shell hummed beneath him, ready to respond. He whispered, "We can do this. We will survive." The ship seemed to respond, lights blinking rapidly, engines vibrating with energy. It was alive, and it trusted him completely. The first attacks began. Alien warships fired volleys of energy, but the drift shell adjusted instantly. Shields strengthened, energy redirected to engines, and the hull twisted to absorb impacts. Ethan guided the ship through asteroid belts and narrow canyons, slipping past weapons fire with impossible precision. The coalition fleet could not keep up. Every attack failed. The drift shell was unpredictable, adaptive, and guided by human instinct. Ethan realized that humans could not only survive, but they could redefine what was possible in space combat. As hours passed, the coalition began to retreat. Commanders were stunned. A single human pilot in a ship called Useless had outmaneuvered hundreds of warships. Messages spread across the galaxy. Humans were not weak. Humans could unlock the potential of technology that others discarded. The drift shell had become a symbol of human skill, courage, and creativity. Ethan and his ship had changed the way the galaxy thought about humans. They could not ignore them anymore. After the battle, Ethan returned to the dock, exhausted but proud. Lisa ran to meet him. "You did it," she said, amazed. Ethan smiled, patting the hull of the drift shell. "We did it. The ship is alive and humans unlocked its potential. The galaxy thought it was useless, but now they see the truth." Lisa nodded slowly. "Humans are different. They see what aliens cannot. They finish what is abandoned." Ethan laughed quietly. "Exactly, and we are only beginning." The drift shell had survived fleets, blockades, and attacks. It had proven that humans could work with technology in ways aliens never imagined. Energy flowed perfectly, shields adapted instantly, engines moved in response to instinct, and the hull shifted like it was alive. Ethan realized that the galaxy would now take notice. Humans were no longer small or weak. They could challenge fleets, survive impossible situations, and unlock abandoned technology. The drift shell was proof, and Ethan Cole had become its perfect pilot. As night fell, Ethan climbed out of the cockpit, placing his hand on the hull. Lights ran across the panels, engines whispered softly, and sensors glowed faintly. He smiled and whispered, "We survived, and now the galaxy will never forget. Humans do not abandon, we create, we finish, we adapt." Lisa stood beside him, understanding fully for the first time. The drift shell was alive, the humans were powerful, and the galaxy would never look at a useless ship the same way again. The battle had changed everything. Alien leaders had learned a lesson. Humans were unique. Humans could see potential, unlock hidden abilities, and survive situations that others considered impossible. The drift shell had survived, and so had Ethan Cole. Together, they had proven that a human pilot could change the fate of a ship, and maybe even the future of the galaxy after surviving the fleets and blockades. Ethan Cole knew the galaxy had begun to notice humans in a new way. The drift shell, once called useless, had proven its power, adaptability, and intelligence. Aliens no longer laughed at it, but many still feared it. Ethan understood their fear, but he also knew that humans had a gift. They could see potential where others saw failure, and they could unlock what was abandoned. He had spent weeks proving it, but now the challenge was bigger. He had to show the galaxy what humans could really do. He started by repairing and studying other abandoned ships. The drift shell had taught him a new way of thinking. Technology that aliens considered broken or impossible to use was simply misunderstood. Ethan traveled to remote docks and old spaceports, finding ships that had been discarded, rusting, and forgotten. He examined each hull, panel, and engine with care, understanding how it had been built and why aliens had given up. Humans could see possibilities that others missed, and Ethan was determined to show it. The first ship he restored was small, simpler than the drift shell, but still remarkable. He cleaned, rewired, and adjusted it, applying everything he had learned. When it finally powered on, the engines hummed, sensors blinked, and the hull adapted to stress. It moved under his hands like a living creature. Lisa Brown watched in amazement. "It works," she said quietly. Ethan smiled. "Humans see what others cannot. We finish what is abandoned." Soon, he began sharing these methods with other humans willing to learn. The galaxy began to notice that humans could restore what had been forgotten. Word of these achievements spread fast. Alien traders, researchers, and even military officers came to watch. They saw humans taking ships that were called junk, broken, or useless, and making them work, fly, and survive. Some tried to buy these ships, offering wealth, power, or access to rare resources, but Ethan refused. These ships were not commodities. They were living technology, waiting for someone who could understand them. Humans had unlocked the drift shell, and now they were unlocking the galaxy's forgotten machines. Then came the moment that would change everything. Ethan took the drift shell out for a demonstration in open space near the edge of the galaxy. Reporters, traders, and alien researchers gathered at safe distances, curious to see what a human-piloted ship could do. Ethan smiled as he climbed into the cockpit. The drift shell hummed in greeting, lights blinking along the panels, engines vibrating gently. He whispered, "Let's show them the truth." The ship responded instantly, shifting power, adjusting sensors, and preparing for flight. He began with speed. The drift shell soared into the sky, twisting and turning with impossible precision. Engines roared, energy redirected automatically, and the hull shifted as needed. The ship was alive, responding faster than any alien system could calculate. Ethan guided it with instinct, trusting the drift shell to anticipate his thoughts. The audience gasped. The movements were unlike anything they had seen. No alien technology could match this combination of adaptation, instinct, and intelligence. The drift shell was alive, and humans were its perfect partners. Then Ethan tested the ship's defensive abilities. He simulated attacks with energy blasts and missiles. The drift shell reacted immediately, shifting energy to shields, redirecting power, and changing its form slightly to absorb impacts. Every attack failed. The audience watched in awe as a ship once called useless survived every threat. Ethan laughed quietly. The galaxy had judged this ship wrong, but humans had seen the truth. Humans could work with what others abandoned, adapt, and create extraordinary outcomes. After the demonstration, alien researchers approached cautiously. They asked questions, scanned the drift shell, and studied its systems. Ethan explained carefully, showing how humans could bond with adaptive technology. The aliens were impressed but skeptical. No species had ever done this before. Ethan nodded. "We are different," he said simply. "Humans finish what others abandon. We see potential, adapt, and survive. That is our strength." Slowly, the galaxy began to understand. Humans were not weak or insignificant. They could unlock the power of technology no one else could. Over the next months, Ethan and his team of humans traveled to abandoned docks across the galaxy. They repaired ships, revived old engines, and reactivated sensors. Every ship they restored became more than a machine. It became alive under human guidance. Aliens observed, some with awe, some with fear. The drift shell led the way, showing what was possible. Ethan's message was simple. Humans could do what others could not. The galaxy had underestimated them for too long. Now humans had proof. As their work continued, the galaxy began to change. Alien leaders had no choice but to acknowledge human skill. They offered alliances, technology sharing, and cooperation, realizing that humans could unlock solutions no other species could. Ethan remained cautious, but he accepted partnerships that helped humans continue restoring abandoned ships. The drift shell became a symbol of this new era, a reminder that humans could see opportunity where others saw failure. One day, Ethan returned to the dock with the drift shell, exhausted but proud. Lisa ran forward. "You have changed everything," she said. Ethan smiled. "We have. Humans have shown the galaxy what we can do. Abandoned ships are no longer useless. Technology is not wasted. It is waiting for someone who understands it." The drift shell hummed in agreement, lights flickering softly. It had been abandoned once, laughed at, and sold for nothing. Now it led a revolution. The galaxy watched as humans continued to restore ships, explore forgotten technology, and survive where others could not. The drift shell became legendary. Alien fleets no longer feared humans because of size or weapons. They feared their creativity, instinct, and adaptability. Ethan Cole, once a simple salvage worker, had changed the future. He had proven that humans could unlock the hidden potential of the galaxy, and that what humans touched did not stay broken. As night fell, Ethan climbed out of the drift shell and placed his hand on the hull. The city lights reflected off its adaptive panels. He whispered, "We have done it. The galaxy sees now. Humans create, adapt, and survive. We finish what others leave behind." Lisa stood beside him, smiling. "Humans are unique," she said. Ethan nodded. "Yes, and the drift shell proved it. One ship, one human can change everything." The galaxy had once laughed at a useless ship, sold for nothing. Now it was alive, adaptive, and legendary. Humans had proven their skill, courage, and ingenuity. Ethan Cole had changed its fate forever. The drift shell, once abandoned, had become a symbol of human potential. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again. And so, Ethan looked at the stars, the drift shell humming beside him. He knew this was only the beginning. Humans had unlocked one secret, but there were more waiting. Abandoned technology, forgotten machines, and useless designs awaited the touch of human hands. The drift shell had shown them the way. Humans would continue creating, adapting, and surviving. The galaxy had learned a lesson: never underestimate what humans could do. Ethan climbed back into the cockpit. The drift shell responded immediately, lights blinking, engines humming, sensors glowing. He took a deep breath and whispered, "Let's continue." The ship lifted smoothly into the sky, moving faster and adapting perfectly. Humans and machines were partners, unstoppable and ready to face whatever the galaxy could throw at them. Together, they would change the future. The drift shell, once sold for nothing, had found its true pilot. Ethan Cole, once a simple salvage worker, had unlocked its hidden potential. The galaxy would remember the day humans proved that nothing was truly useless if a human could see its value. And so, humans continued to restore, adapt, and create, leaving a legacy that would shape the stars forever. The story of the drift shell was no longer a tale of failure or waste. It was a story of human skill, courage, and vision. Ethan Cole and the drift shell had changed the galaxy. What was abandoned became alive. What was useless became legendary. And the galaxy had learned that humans could take the impossible, the forgotten, and the broken, and turn it into something extraordinary.